I vividly remember sitting under the covers of my bed watching game theory videos about Five Nights at Freddy's and being both intrigued and horrified by these animatronic mascots who were supposedly haunted by the souls of innocent children. At the time, the only horror I'd been exposed to were heffalumps and woozles from the 100-Acre Woods. Sometimes I would watch Goosebumps for a little thrill. The rare chance I'd be up to it, I'd try to get through Coraline without shutting off the TV in a cold sweat. But this was different, unlike anything I'd ever seen before. Normally, if something was too much for me, I would avoid it at all costs. But I always found myself coming back to Freddy and Friends, trying to solve the mysteries and understand the lore, and hell, even sometimes play the games, which were scary to try to get through, but ultimately doable. That is, until Five Nights at Freddy's 4 came out. Like everyone else, I was enthralled by the idea of another FNAF game, but when I downloaded the demo and the menu presented itself, I was treated to something I'd never come close to experiencing before in a video game. Complete and utter dread. I'd be able to get to night 3 or 4 of the other 3 games, but I could never get past night 1 of Five Nights at Freddy's 4. Not because of difficulty, but because I could never muster up the courage to shine my flashlight down the dark and empty hall and shut my iPad off before any danger appeared. It took me nearly 6 years to finally beat that game, and even then I did the bare minimum, completing night 5, never diving into its extra nights, because I didn't want to put myself through that stress and fear anymore. And even now that I've beaten and re-beaten this game 10, 20 times over, it still gives me chills to this day. I wanted to know why that is, so I decided to go back and see how it scared not just me, but hundreds of thousands of kids and grown-ups alike. I wanted to see why Five Nights at Freddy's 4 is the best in the franchise. At the time, this was praised for being the most unique out of the Five Nights at Freddy's franchise, and that is true even down to its gameplay. The biggest changes are how it ditches the cameras and power, which were integral to the gameplay of the other games. So what does Five Nights at Freddy's 4 do to compensate for it? Well, instead of power, your greatest weakness is now your lack of defense. The best you can do to fight off these monsters is to shine your measly flashlight at them to deter them for less than a minute before they come back to attack you again. If you hear an animatronic walking down the left or right hallway, then you run to the corresponding door and stop to listen. For breathing. If you don't hear breathing, then you shine your flashlight and move on. But if you do, you shut your door immediately and listen for the monster to lose interest and walk away. Then you can shine your flashlight down the hall and leave. There is also Foxy and Freddy, who have different means of attack. Foxy starts out in your hallways and sneaks into your closet and waits there on a timer, and if you don't check on him enough, he will leave the closet and kill you. Freddy sends his Freddles to gather on your bed, and like Foxy, if you don't check on them enough, you're dead. That is, until night 5, where you're thrown for a loop when you only have one animatronic to fear. Fredbear. He stalks you down both halls, in your closet, and on your bed, and you must keep him at bay until 6 a.m. hits. This gameplay is challenging because there's never a time where you can take a breath and get a hold of your surroundings. It's always the immediate danger that must be dealt with before moving on to the next immediate danger. There's no time to think ahead or to come up with a plan, which makes you more stressed, which makes you more scared. The gameplay loop is really simple, so simple in fact that in later nights it only takes one mistake to get a game over. The loop varies among players, normally depending on when Foxy decides to enter your room, but the basic blueprint is to check the door, check the bed, if Foxy's in the closet then check the closet, check the opposite door, and repeat. If you're calm, cool, and collected, then you should be able to beat these nights with little challenge. But if you're stressed or anxious, then the game becomes absurdly difficult. The game causes you to stress using sound and visual cues that I'll get into later. My favorite aspect of the gameplay is when you get into a groove of checking doors and closets, you start to pay less and less attention, and you feel really good about yourself, thinking that nothing can stop you and you'll move on to the next night, and boom, you're dead. Because you were getting into such a groove that you forgot to listen to the breathing cue and assumed you'd be safe. In between nights, there's a minigame called Fun with Plushtrap, where you must stop Plushtrap when he reaches the marked X on the floor. If completed correctly, then you get to skip 2 hours on the next night. I think these are fun but stressful minigames with a good reward that strengthen your ability to listen to audio cues. Speaking of audio cues, sound is where Five Nights at Freddy's 4 thrives. This may be at fault of my limited gaming knowledge, but the sound design in this game is unlike anything I've ever seen before in a horror game. Ironically, the best part about the sound is the lack of it. Similar to how hunger makes food taste better, the lack of noise makes sounds more impactful, whether that be to relieve you or to scare you. There's miscellaneous noises that have no meaning other than to immerse you, like a grandfather clock chiming or a dog barking outside. Other than ambience, there's such little noise in this game, and the little noise it has is very quiet, which makes it more scary when you realize that the most important noise you have to pay attention to, the breathing, is quieter than that of your own, and if you fail to pick up on it, you get treated to the deafening scream in the jump scare, easily the loudest and most shocking jump scare in the series. The sound is so important to the gameplay that it's entirely possible to beat this game blindfolded. Not to say the visuals don't help. They do, but I'll talk about that later. I would talk about the reception of this game, but I'm tired, so I'm gonna get my friend Angelina to do so instead. Take it away, I guess.
When Five Nights at Freddy's 4 came out on July 23, 2015, fans' initial reactions were hesitant. I mean, another game released by Scott 3 months after Five Nights at Freddy's 3 was released could have either been a make or a break for the FNAF franchise. But much to everyone's delight, FNAF 4 was not only a hit, but a new look to the FNAF games. Many people loved the game, claiming that it felt older and aimed for the more mature people that were playing it. But among the happy reactions, there were also some negative ones. Some YouTubers, such as PewDiePie, claimed that the game lost its scare, causing quite a bit of backlash from the fans of both PewDiePie and FNAF. PewDiePie's reaction caused a lot of people to look outside the box. No pun intended. And to see that this game held a lot less in lore and story than the other games. So the people that tuned into the game expecting to see Freddy, Chica, and Bonnie, maybe even Foxy, jump scare you as you play a child, were greeted by 8-bit characters whose story made no sense, gameplay that was extremely terrifying, and broken eardrums. There were a lot of people who stopped keeping up with the lore and the games in general after this game was released, because it made no sense. I don't blame them. What's the deal with the box anyways? Have we figured that out yet?
I don't fucking know.
No? Okay. Personally, I think the release of this game was a crucial point for Scott and everyone that enjoys FNAF as a whole. 5 months after this game was released, Scott Cawthon teamed up with author Kiera Breed Riley and wrote a trilogy called, you guessed it, Five Nights at Freddy's. These 3 books were a huge hit. The only thing that people complained about was the fact that they didn't really feel like FNAF books, because the story was completely different from the lore the fans had uncovered from the games at the time. 7 years later, and a whole other book series, and we've managed to piece together a good third of the game lore just from the information the books gave us. I'd get into this, but that's a whole other video. In the end, there was a lot of positive reception leading to the creation of fan games such as Five Nights at Candy's 3 and fan songs like The Living Tombstone, I've Got No Time, which bases itself completely off the game. I believe overall, Five Nights at Freddy's 4 is the best game in the franchise to date. And I'm not just saying that because I'm getting paid to say it, or because that's the name of the video. I do genuinely think that Scott Cawthon realized that he could make banger games, and that's what he did. Well, except for that one game. And the other one.
Oi, don't trash FNAF World. Well, anyways, back to the visuals. I think they're really good in this game. I think the menu sets the mood perfectly, showing us silhouettes of the animatronics stalking your house. The bedroom is dark, and the hallways are darker, which lets your imagination decide what may be down the hall waiting for the first chance it'll get to attack. Contrary to popular belief, I think these character designs are really good for this game, although definitely aren't as good as the FNAF 1 designs or some of the withered designs from FNAF 2. And besides, you barely see them until you die, so them being good designs didn't matter as much in this game as it did the others. The 8-bit cutscenes in this game look better than they do in the others, but that's not really the biggest compliment in the world. The cutscenes in this game are great and tell a pretty basic but sad story about this unnamed kid commonly referred to as the crying child. They depict a broken family, neglectful father, and antagonistic brother to this traumatized child who's, well, he's seen some stuff, man. Throughout the cutscenes, the child's stuffed animal, who seems to be taking the role as the child's conscience, tells us what's going on through this kid's head as he walks around the pizzeria. Eventually, we reach the day of the party, where I think the most pivotal moment in the Five Nights at Freddy's lore takes place. It shows us the crying child's brother teasing him with his friends about his fear of the pizzeria, To scare him even more, they lift him up and shove him in the head of Fredbear's, where his head gets crushed and the child assumably dies to his injuries. After beating the sixth night, there's a somber scene of the kid stuffed Fredbear saying goodbye to him, and after speaking the infamous line, "I will put you back together," he fades into the darkness, along with the crying child. And then after beating the seventh night, you get the box. Oh, okay, I'll talk about the lore. The lore in this game had many people divided because unlike the other three games, nobody can piece together the clues. Many people clung to the dream theory as an explanation to all the weirdness in this game, but left plenty of people disappointed to think that everything up to this point wasn't real, but that was debunked pretty quickly. Lots of people, myself included, believe that the gameplay segments take place in the mind of the crying child, whether it be on his deathbed or at home until the sixth night where Nightmare arrives to take him away. There were lots of people who thought that this game as a whole was only one piece of a bigger puzzle. People were seeking answers from FNAF World, which had recently released to negative reviews. People looked to the books, The Silver Eyes, for answers, and even when Sister Location came out, people started retroactively trying to solve the mysteries with clues from later games, like the 1983 surveillance tapes and sound illusion discs in Sister Location. Those were some of the biggest theories, but everything there was mostly speculation, and nobody had any undeniable answers to the mysteries of this game, including the missing girl's room, the purple guy appearance, and the box. Yes, I'll admit, the box was an unnecessary and lame addition to this game that didn't go anywhere and had no importance in the long run. It's clear Scott had changed the contents of the box many times, and any attempt of an answer would now just be disappointing and lame. So they better not try. Other than that, I really like the mysteries of this game, even though they don't have answers, just because it lets you come up with your own answers. This game is the most interpretive Five Nights at Freddy's game to date, because most anyone can have the most insane theories about this game, and they would have the same amount of evidence as a sane theory. While others may find the interpretism annoying, I think it's very well done, and that goes for the entire game. Yeah, not everyone likes it, but I think it's the best game in the series to date, and honestly, I don't think any new game will change that. It's definitely a hard choice, and there's some close runner-ups for sure, like the first, the second, the sixth. I love most of these games, but the fourth one's just always been the most special to me. I don't do ratings for video games, so I just want to ask what your interpretation of the lore is. Do you think it's the Bite of 87 or 83? Do you think the crying child is Michael or Evan? Honestly, any of these theories I can get behind, as long as it doesn't tie into Security Breach. Fuck Security Breach.
This is the most obnoxious thing I've ever experienced in my life.